The designing of many minivan camper custom builds starts with setting up a floor plan layout without much thought to right-sizing those space allocations. Perhaps this look from a different angle will be helpful to you in your design phase. Often, what people find when they start using a new minivan camper conversion is an immediate creation of a mental list of changes that they want to make to that build. That's often because the way they imagine living in that space turns out to be pretty different in real day-to-day living. Most people start out with a floor plan or a bunch of ideas that they've seen online. While that's good, what they actually are looking at is a space designed for someone else's use, not their own. They don't give much thought to resizing that layout to fit their particular needs. The more ways a person knows to look at solving things, the better their solutions will be. So while looking at a floor plan is good, it's even better to look at your design ideas from more than just one angle. Here, we'll explore a method of sizing your ideas to fit your style of minivan camper. Defining your minivan camper style. The main element in right-sizing your overall design is defining your minivan camper's main purpose. To do that isn't complicated. In fact, as you'll see, it's as easy as answering just 3 basic questions. While it's likely your experiences are going to involve many different uses, what we're after here is determining one that you'll be involved in the most. The 3 questions are whether or not you have a home base, the main environment that you'll spend time in, and what we call the primary use or mode for your minivan camper. It's not very often that forums, videos, or blogs address whether a minivan camper conversion user has a home base. The discussion usually surrounds camping places, equipment, or performing tasks. But whether or not a camper has a home base is probably the single biggest factor that involves right-sizing your conversion design and storage space allocation for each of your design elements. People that have a home base, whether you're doing one overnight trip or many nights away, don't need to concern themselves with things that aren't needed or used on a day-to-day basis. People that don't have a home base are essentially packing their entire life into that vehicle. Things that they need only occasionally need to be included. One example is paper documents, even if we only use them once a year for things like tax preparation or certificates that we might need to prove our identity, medical receipts kept in case of future billing disputes, legal items like wills or powers of attorney that required our notarized signature. Even in this digital age, we still keep at least a small file system for paper-based records. Other items can include things like tool sets to do periodic maintenance, clothing or outdoor gear that is able to cover all 4 seasons of weather, a few small family heirloom items that you don't want to give away, specialized chemicals that we use only every so often, personal hobby items that a part-time vehicle dweller might not even bother with. You get the idea. Someone going on an even extended 6 or 8 month travel tour isn't going to need to pack their entire life into that vehicle, and it really does make a big difference in organizing storage space and coming up with a great layout plan. Categorizing space. The starting point for allocating it. We're going to categorize our spaces in these 5 areas: basic necessities, hygiene, consumable resources, convenience items, and gear. Then, this is what will give you a very valuable perspective on right-sizing your van conversion space. Basic necessities. You can think of these as daily use, non-consumable items. Another way to define them are the items listed on a hiker's 10 essentials list. Things like clothes, sleep system, light. Hygienic items, things that manage cleanliness and waste. Consumable resources, food, water, fuel, maybe personal care things. Convenience items, electrical power, refrigeration, heat, comfort features, and aesthetic things. And then there's gear. This is more commonly outdoor equipment for camping or sports, but it can also be items needed for being employed while you're mobile. Work gear. That can include trade tools, connectivity devices, employer-owned computers, paper files or literature, musical instruments, artistic supplies, audiovisual equipment, work-specific clothing like uniforms, things commonly needed for traveling occupations like construction, nursing, performing artists, or digital content creators. The use environment. The environment question splits the main use into three choices: conventional camping, urban, or remote. Conventional camping is using the common public or private sites that have nearby utilities and facilities. This is a paid-for stay with access to water. There are toilet facilities. They often have a shower available. Perks can include access to electricity, Wi-Fi, ice, firewood. Reasonably close access to a town or city for resupplying is more common than it's not. They can get by on moderate storage set aside for consumable goods, which gives them a good amount of space for gear. Most conventional campers have less of a concern for bad weather events, since they can often plan ahead or around them. Urban campers. They have easy access to supplies and public restrooms. They have a means to shower and publicly accessible Wi-Fi. They don't need to have much space set aside for consumables or gear. So they often have conversions that have a good amount of space to accommodate for comfort features or aesthetic items. This type of use might serve even two adult travelers, since they use the conversion mostly as just a sleeping area and rely heavily on easy access to their common needs. Remote or dispersed camping is the most space-demanding in planning a conversion. It differs from conventional camping in a greater need to be self-sufficient for longer periods of time. They require on-board means for hygienic needs, a large amount of space for consumables, and lean heavily toward functional builds with the least space for comfort and aesthetic stuff. Remote campers are likely invested in creating builds with multi-use interior design elements. They have a greater need to be able to accommodate living in the interior over extended time during bad weather events. And the risk to needing to use safety equipment is the highest with this use environment. They're actually more inclined to see safety gear as a basic need rather than a gear item. They might also see onboard power, refrigeration, and heat as leaning more as a need rather than a convenience. Modes of use. Looking at the modes of minivan camper use, we'll divide that into three different categories. These modes also have common correlating functions associated with them. These categories are travel, recreation, and dwelling. If the most used mode is travel for the way that you minivan camp, the common function leans most heavily toward comfort and convenience. Travelers will be spending the majority of their time in or near urban centers, having less of a need for self-sufficiency, onboard gear, and consumables. Recreation-based conversion designs commonly have the main function of gear hauler. That's their priority for the conversion design. With only moderate space for consumables, they depend on being able to resupply within a few days' time. And less space for convenience items means that they're kind of living closer to a backpacker's lifestyle than an elaborate car camper's lifestyle. There's a huge variety of recreation-based gear, so this group comes up with really inventive ways to store and organize it all. From hikers to bikers to climbers to kayakers to surfers, there's a good amount of gear that goes with all of them, and that's in addition to the camping equipment. A dweller is somebody that's going to be living out of their rig longer than a long vacation or an extended trip that's planned and has some kind of end date. If you'll be living out of your minivan for a long while without an end date in mind, that will make the main function of your build your sole support system. Whether you'll see dwelling out of a minivan as a temporary or permanent goal, it focuses most on the 3 E's: essentials, effectively, efficiently. That means the effort that you put into planning and designing your build is going to have a direct impact on your long-term quality of life. Answering the 3 questions. defining what your minivan conversion lifestyle is. With us having covered what the background is behind the 3 questions, let's go ahead and define what our minivan conversion lifestyle is. Of these 3 questions, choose only one answer, and it would be helpful if you wrote that down, perhaps using the format of a number dash number dash number, kind of like if you answered number 1 to all 3 questions, it would be 1-1-1. So have you had a home base? Yes or no? What is your main environment? 1 would be conventional camping, 2 would be urban, 3 being remote. What mode of use are you going to find yourself most involved in? 1 would be travel, 2 recreation, or 3 dwelling. Getting down to it, here's the resolution, and this is going to be a starting point for allocating space for your design. There are going to be 12 combinations possible from those 3 questions, and yours is going to be one of these. I've created an arbitrary % of space allocation for each category. Now, the big takeaway is looking at the entire chart and seeing that the main element in right-sizing your overall design is defining your minivan camping purpose. Doing that prioritizes or minimizes the various space categories. Having this high-level perspective is a help to right-sizing your design. And obviously, the second benefit, it's giving you a starting point in allocating the space in your design. You can certainly change this to your heart's content, but having a place to start is better than not having a place to start. This has been a lot of information squeezed into a pretty quick video. If you'd like to have our written version to review and reference, there's a link to that in the video description below, and that'll take you to a great web page that has everything down. I hope you found this way to evaluate design ideas to be really helpful for you. If you'd like to support the channel for future content, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. Happy minivanning.